Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Fortman. I'm the Commissioner of the Maine Department of Labor, and I'm joined here today by several of my colleagues. To my right is...
Good morning, I'm Kim Smith. I'm the Deputy Commissioner.
And in the room with us helping is...
This is Isaac Chingris, Legislative Liaison.
And this is Jessica Picard. I'm the Communications Manager.
Okay, so that's it here for our team. I want to thank you for joining today. The goal is to give a quick overview of things that are happening related to unemployment insurance and the work that we've been doing here at the Department of Labor. I did receive some questions that came in last night and this morning. I will try to address as many of those as possible between the Deputy Commissioner and myself as we go through the overview, and then leave time to answer any additional questions that you have. Today, we're joined by legislators and the press. For those of you who attended these meetings with us in the past, we held, I think, about 4 meetings through about mid-April, and at that time it was just legislators. Today the press have also been invited, so there are press on this, I still don't know what to call these. I mean, the Zoom experience that we're having, and so there are press listening in, but the press will not be asking questions. However, they may be recording some of the information. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. For legislators who are on the call, in the past, what we have done is encourage people to use the chat feature so that we're able to capture information, although you will, of course, be able to unmute yourself as well. But we could probably get through more in the, if people are using the chat, and I already see some folks starting to put some information on there.
I did also want to add that we are also recording this and we'll be posting it online after we finish.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, that was important as well. And I think some folks are calling in. So for the folks who are on the phone, we'll also make sure that when we get to the question and answer that we open it up to you as well. And there is a way for you to unmute yourself. So to just give kind of a top line overview of where we're at, during May, Maine had the highest week-on-week increase in initial claims and the 3rd highest increase in continued claims, according to U.S. Department of Labor data that was released on June 11th. And the initial claims rose by 250% during the week of May 16th. And the spike in continued claims continued during the second half of May, about a 67% increase to the first half of the month. And that resulted in one of the highest civilian labor force claims rates in the country. And so this surge in May triggered some concerns for us. We were seeing rates that were not consistent with trends either across the nation or in our closest neighbors of Vermont and New Hampshire. So those spikes, along with some information that we were receiving from law enforcement across the country, really caused us to start looking at the potential of fraud activity, because in addition to the fact that we were hearing reports of fraud that was widespread across the nation in states such as Washington, North Carolina, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Wyoming, Florida, Mississippi. So there was widespread fraud that we were hearing about from our networks, and we were seeing claims numbers that indicated to us that either there was something happening that was unique to the Maine economy, or there was a potential for fraud, or some combination of both. To just give you a sense of what's going on generally with claims data, we have accelerated our payment process to get benefits out to Maine people. I think all of you received, or at least should have a copy of the materials that I provided to the legislature about a week ago. The Century Foundation did a report on benefit payments across the country, and Maine ranked in the top tier of states getting benefits out to claimants. And again, as of June, there were 145,278 distinct claim applications, and the vast majority of them, 116,000, or roughly 80% of them, have been processed and resulted in payments. This data, most recent data, is based on our internal data, because as far as I know, there hasn't been outside evaluation of the most recent data by any other organizations. We were always trying to see not only how can we do our job better, but where do we fit in the scheme of things across the country. And as you know, the pandemic is impacting every single state. Every single unemployment insurance program in the country is also seeing unprecedented volume. We are all responding to the challenges in front of us. And we also think it's important for us to look at where do we stack up in terms of how we're delivering services. So based on widely available news reports, Ohio reported that they're paying about 50% of claims as of May 23rd. Washington State is at about 58% of claims as of June 11th. And Michigan comes in at about 77% as of June 13th. And again, we're at about 80%. So once again, I am well aware that there are Maine people who are not receiving their benefits, and we are working diligently to get benefits to all of those people. However, I just wanted to provide a little bit of a framework for you in terms of how we stack up compared to other states in delivery of services. And looking back to the beginning of March, we were basically providing benefits to almost 7,500 people the week of March 15th through the 21st. And in the last 3 weeks, we have been delivering benefits to roughly 72,000 Maine people on average in the past 3 weeks. Now, as all of you know, unemployment insurance is intended as a partial wage replacement and an economic stabilizer. And to just get a sense of what does that mean to not just the individuals in Maine, but also to the Maine economy, we paid out around $76 million in benefits the week of June 6th through the 13th, for a total of $807 million since the beginning of the pandemic. We also are well aware, as I had said earlier, that we need to pay careful attention to the possibility of fraud. And I want to just give you an overview of what we're seeing there, unless Kim, you wanted to add anything or jump in and start talking about fraud.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. So during the week of May 17th through the 23rd was really when we saw the giant spike in claims. As the commissioner said earlier, it was about a 250% increase in 1 week. And we were starting to receive lots of reports from employers, from individuals who were saying, you know, this person is still working, or I didn't file that claim. And so everything, it all lined up all at once. We were beginning to hear reports from other states. We were hearing from the federal government that fraud had been coming, was impacting certain states nationally. And it's a case of imposter fraud. This is where criminals have taken PII that they've obtained from other sources, and used it. You know, imposter fraud could be anything. It could be unemployment fraud. It could be credit card fraud. It could be banking fraud. In this case, it's unemployment fraud. We believe this information came from breaches that you've all probably heard about in recent years. The Equifax breach, the Experian, Hannaford, and Target have had breaches of their information. So this has been happening, and we believe that's where this information came from and is now being used for unemployment fraud. As I said, we were hearing from our federal partners. We started working with the Department of Justice. We've been working for the Inspector Generals, with USDOL and the Social Security Administration. Been working with Homeland Security, the US Postal Service, the FBI. Here in the state of Maine, we've been working with our Maine IT partners. We've been working with the state treasurer and lots of different financial institutions to try and stop these fraudulent payments from going out. Last week, we canceled 3,500 initial claims and 8,400 weekly certifications because we suspected that they were fraudulently filed. Over the last few weeks since that mid-May timeframe through last week, we've received 21,400 notification emails of people saying that this is a case of fraud. We know that some of those are duplicates because the employer and the employee, the worker, are both reporting it as fraud. We have been processing we've been verifying.
So we've got two tracks going here. So we have one track of people who are saying that that they are still employed and that they're receiving information from the department asking for you know, documentation that they are, employers are saying to us, I know that, you know, Kim Smith is still working at the Department of Labor, yet I'm getting information asking about her separation, her reason for separation. So there's one stream of work where we are receiving information from both employees and employers who are reporting potential fraud, and we have a team of folks working on that. And then we also have a team working on ID verification. As Deputy Smith pointed out, there were claims that were either held or canceled as potentially fraudulent. The flags that we're using are based on, or the filters that we're using are based on information that have been provided by both our law enforcement partners, national organizations, and sister states that are working on this, so that we can not just wait until after fraudulent payments have been made and then try to recoup them, but also try to stop payments from going out the door. We recognize that this is a blunt instrument at this point, and we are refining it constantly based on information that we're receiving from all of those sources that I mentioned, as well as from individuals who are reaching out to us and documenting their identification. We are partnering with the Department of Corrections on doing the ID verification, and we believe by the end of the week we will have processed all of the ID verifications that we have received to date from Maine people.
And I just wanted to add, we have received about 13,000 emails that contain the documentation, and we will be through those by the end of this week.
Right. We also are aware that there are people whose claims are being held who may not understand what the process is or how to report the fact that they are legitimate and that they deserve their benefits. And after discussions with some of the other states that have had more experience than we have had with this, we are going to be mailing out information to those claimants. One of the challenges during a situation like this is you want to make sure every legitimate person is receiving their benefits as quickly as possible, and you also want to make sure that you are not paying people who are, you know, criminals, the benefits. the Office of the Inspector General at the U.S. Department of Labor testified in front of a congressional committee a few weeks ago, and he anticipated that the fraud across all of the states could be as much as $26 billion. So we are taking this threat very seriously and doing everything that we can to, again, make sure that people who are entitled to benefits receive those benefits as quickly as possible, and at the same time that we're not paying money out to people who should not receive those benefits and are part of criminal gangs.
I wanted to add, we have received reports from people who reported their case as being fraudulent, but still got some paperwork from us. Just want to add that that paperwork was probably already in process. It doesn't mean that we haven't done anything with that report. It means that documentation was already going out the door. The same is true for the debit card. A lot of people are saying they got their debit card in the mail. We're asking folks to please destroy that card. In all likelihood, there is no money on it. We have been able to recapture any payments that went out to the debit card, assuming it hadn't been taken yet, but please destroy the card as soon as you get it. It doesn't mean that we haven't processed that as a fraudulent claim.
Right. The other thing that I want to add with that, as well as one of the other, there were two other measures that that we took early on to try to process claims as quickly as possible. One was normally in unemployment insurance, there is a 10-day to 2-week hold for before initial claims are processed. We lifted that back in March, and we're just trying to, and we were not waiting to receive paperwork back from employers before we began processing the claims, because pretty much the state, we were seeing widespread closures, and employers were reaching out to us and saying, please get payments to our staff as quickly as possible. You know, we had, or at least I had never heard of imposter fraud before. And we were more concerned with making sure people got their benefits. We have reinstated the 10 to 14-day hold on initial payments as a way of trying to make sure that people, that we're able to do that additional level of due diligence before making initial payments. The other thing is that we were also allowing a kind of self-service backdating for claims because people had been waiting. There is no backdating that is permitted by individuals. They must go through a claims representative in order to do more than, I think we always allow a 2-week backdate, but individuals are not permitted any longer to use that as a self-service feature on the through the Reemploy ME system. We've received lots of questions about, you know, are we hiring staff? If so, how many? When are people coming? As you all know, back in, I want to say we began conversations with a contact center on March 28th-ish. It was roughly when the CARES Act was signed into law. And by April 10th, we had the contact center on board and moved from having roughly 13 people as claims representatives handling calls to 100 people on the phones every day. So we have that group of people on board. This week, we brought on board 24 law students and recent law school graduates to help with our fact-finding over the summer on a parallel track. Those are limited period positions, but on a parallel track, we're also hiring for 17 permanent positions and hopefully we'll have those folks in place by the fall. But the law students will supplement the 15 people that we currently have doing adjudication. So that should help significantly with our fact finding. And we are also on a daily basis working with our colleagues at LL Bean to interview for 52 eligibility specialists, 34 claims adjudicators, 22 fraud investigators, 34 accounting specialists, 4 hearings officers, and other. This is a rolling process. You know, if you're familiar, I mean, and I'm sure all of you are, with hiring, you have to create the positions, post the positions, interview for the positions. People need to give notice and then they're on board. So we are moving as quickly as possible, but this will take time over the coming weeks.
Yeah, and I just want to add, we have completed, with LL Bean's help, the first round of interviews for the eligibility specialist and the tax specialist. So we'll be reviewing those materials and making some offers initially. We will probably be going out and recruiting for additional applicants on these positions. So folks who are interested should go to the maine.gov website, and at the top there's a link for employment, and you can follow that link to find the postings here at the Department of Labor.
So every Thursday we do a press release and we list the initial claims, the weekly claims, the pandemic unemployment insurance assistance claims, and the weekly pandemic unemployment assistance claims. Those numbers are all now on our website. But there were roughly 3,000 initial claims for regular UI last week, about 66,000 weekly claims for regular UI, also about 3,000 pandemic unemployment assistance claims, and about not quite 24,000 pandemic unemployment assistance weekly claims. So those numbers seem much lower when you're talking about, you know, 6,000 initial claims, and we're saying, oh, that seems much lower. A mere 13 weeks ago, that would have been, you know, 10 times higher than what we were seeing. We also have been receiving lots of questions about, so what's the difference between claims and individuals? Because those numbers don't line up. So Kim, do you want to talk about why claims don't equal people?
Yeah, claims is a number that we're required to report to USDOL, and it's a measure of how many claims we have to process, in essence. And claims don't always equal people, because people can have multiple claims, and that's part of the normal process. It typically happens when somebody is initially found not monetarily eligible for unemployment. That means in the previous 18 months, they didn't earn enough wages. They weren't, in essence, connected to the labor force enough to qualify for unemployment benefits. But what we do when that applicant isn't initially eligible, if they still have an active claim when the quarter changes, as we had at the end of March, we go through and do a reassessment based on the wages that are reported to us in April. So at the beginning of May, we did a reassessment on anybody who had an active claim, using that new quarter's worth of wages, and determined if then they were eligible monetarily for unemployment. So that's why claims don't always equal people, because in that case, a person would have two unemployment claims.
But I think the part that's important to understand about that doesn't mean people are getting paid twice. You know, that it's a, as Kim said, it's a production number, but people are determined eligible and they are only paid based on that eligibility. So it's a one-time payment. It's not multiple, it's not duplicate payments to people. You know, if we want to, we've also received lots of questions about our Reemploy ME system. So that is the system that we use in order to to process and to apply for unemployment insurance. And, you know, and I think I said this in the letter that I sent you, you know, while the public interface is probably not one that I would have chosen, it does perform the core function of determining eligibility and making timely payments. And from the very beginning of this pandemic, that has been the primary goal here, is how do we make sure that we determine eligibility quickly and make payments as quickly as possible. If I unfortunately had been here during the Great Recession, and if we still had that legacy system, I can't imagine what our benefit payout would have been, but it would not have been paying 80% of benefits at this point in time. I think we can definitely make improvements, and we are making improvements as we move forward. And I think we're all learning a lot from this experience, where this system has been stress tested beyond anyone's imagination, as have our unemployment insurance staff. And we've received questions about, you know, it's part of the consortium. Do you work with the other partners? How does that happen? And yes, there are core pieces that the consortium partners all use. There is a process. If we, for example, wanted a particular module that other states were not interested in, we could stand that up on our own. But if it's a shared module, then we all share the costs for the creation of those modules. So
actually, some of the things that Maine has that our other partners don't have is the alternate base period and dependency allowances.
Right.
So the alternate base period is when we look at those previous 18 months before somebody applied, the current, our state law says we look at the first four quarters of that 18-month period. But if somebody's not monetarily eligible, then our state law allows us to look at the last 4 quarters. That's called the alternate base period. Our other partners don't have that. So that's different programming that has to be put in place for us. In addition, we currently have an additional $10 a week that we can pay out if someone has a dependent that they are caring for. The other states don't have that. So that's something that's different for us as well.
Also, the work share program
Work-share.
is, you know, that's an optional program that Maine has. And there are about 23 states that have that. And so that's something that's different. For the pandemic unemployment assistance program, Mississippi had a fairly robust disaster unemployment assistance program. You know, our last disaster unemployment assistance program was during the ice storm here, so that was not something that we had, and we were able to share some code to help jumpstart getting that program. Even though it's not the same, there was some code that allowed us to begin putting the pandemic unemployment assistance program in place that we would not have had access to otherwise. We've also received lots of questions about disqualified cases. You know, why would someone be disqualified? And again, you've got state unemployment insurance, which is a program over here. You must have lost your job through no fault of your own. You must be able to work, available to work. Actively seeking work, those are kind of core principles, and you need to be monetarily eligible. So that's state unemployment. Pandemic unemployment assistance was designed to pick up all of those people who are not covered by state unemployment assistance, and so people who are disqualified from receiving state unemployment would then be eligible for pandemic unemployment assistance. You must first prove that the person is not eligible for state unemployment assistance. So it may seem, you know, duplicative, but that is part of the federal requirement.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that when we started at the beginning of May, when we started taking the self-employment applications. Folks were getting a monetary determination that had the 0 on it. We said, that's okay. That's part of the process. That's the first step in proving that you're not eligible for state unemployment. And then we started rolling those folks into the PUA program.
And the people that we started rolling over, we started with self-employed. We started with insufficient wages, I think, then self-employed. And then there's a category of people who may have been eligible for state unemployment in the past and may have been claiming the benefits in a way that was considered improper during that process. They could have gone back to work and not reported that they were working again, or receiving some sort of wages or other remuneration. And so that group of people are the last group of people who are rolling into the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And I think we moved about 1,300 people who fit into that category into PUA last night. Although some folks, unemployment insurance is a very, it's a federal state partnership. It's a partnership with employers because they primarily are the ones who pay into the unemployment insurance trust fund. And it is also very individual. So Kim and I could both work at the Department of Labor, but I may, you know, have certain eligibility. I may have only worked here a short period of time. She may have worked here longer. So I may not meet the monetary eligibility, and she may. So each situation is a little bit different. And there are very unique circumstances that some people are having, that some people have, and that we need to, they need to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. We're receiving questions about PEUC and PUA, so Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, and the PUA self-employment redeterminations. As you know, beginning May 1st, if you were self-employed, we said, hold off, do not send us any additional information. We will ask you for your tax data so that we can make a determination on your actual weekly benefit. And in the meantime, we will pay you $172 a week and then adjust it and make that adjustment retroactive when we receive that tax data. We were in the process of standing up both of those programs when the fraud hit, and we needed to divert staff from those projects to focusing on fraud. As you've heard, the Bureau of Unemployment Compensation has roughly 105 staff spread out across all functions, including tax, including benefits, including hearings, that whole list that I had mentioned before that we're hiring for. And so it's the same group. And when the pandemic hit, we shifted many of the folks from performing their normal functions to focus on the benefit function. Because of fraud, we've had to carefully pull people back, have them focused on not just getting benefits out to people, but also working on the fraud. And that includes all of our team working on programming changes. We have stabilized, I believe, the fraud situation at the moment, and have resumed the testing for PEUC and PUA, and should be able to announce something in, you know, in the coming days.
And I would like to add that even though we don't have PEUC up yet, that's what provided the additional up to 13 weeks of benefits for people who exhausted their state unemployment. We have been paying those people through the PUA program. Once we get PEUC up, we will transition them to the appropriate program and adjust those benefits so that they are reflected as PEUC benefits.
Yeah. The other group of questions we're getting are around work search. So as I had said earlier, you know, normally in order to be eligible for unemployment, unemployment is a partial wage replacement. It's temporary. In Maine, you have a 26-week maximum time frame. The federal programs have added an additional 13 weeks to that. And because our unemployment rate has spiked dramatically, we also have an additional 13 weeks. But typically, as you're collecting unemployment benefits, one of the requirements is you must also be looking for work. We have a work search waiver in place, and that was due because we were, you know, businesses were closed. People were being advised that they needed to be staying at home. And so having people searching for work just didn't make sense. There are, so now that the economy is improving and we're starting to see businesses opening, we will be resuming that work search component as part of unemployment, the traditional program. There will be 2 dates there. The first date is July 11th. People who are not attached to the workforce. So this means that the separation wasn't a temporary separation. Your employer closed. That folks who are in that category, starting on July 12th, will need to perform the normal work search requirements that come with unemployment insurance eligibility. People who are still connected to their employer will still have the work search waiver in place until August 8th. Now, the reason for that is because these are folks, and this was part of the emergency legislation that the legislature passed, that basically recognized that employers wanted to bring back the same employees, that they were looking at this as a temporary layoff, that they had invested, you know, time in training, and you know, these were people who understood their businesses. So if the employee is still connected to that employer, then that work search stays in place for them until August 8th. It is tied to the emergency declaration. So if the emergency declaration changes and is extended beyond that, that date would extend as well.
And it's the emergency declaration plus 30 days for that group of people.
Right. And so as people are getting ready for that, we do want to just remind people that we have our Bureau of Employment Services does weekly Zoom rapid response sessions where they lay out the range of training opportunities that are available to people. There are job postings that are circulated and shared. We want to make sure that people start thinking about how do they re-engage in the economy, and that they don't end up in a situation where they have exhausted all of their unemployment benefits and they do not have a job at the end of it. So we'll be working closely with people to help them transition. Trying to think if there were other big questions, or if we should switch to, I think those were the,
yeah, we have 15 minutes left, so maybe we should switch to questions.
Let's switch to questions. So I'm trying to read it. I have hard time reading.
Speak to the 800 number. I've been getting reports that there are no wait times, and then others are being told to call back at a later time.
Yeah, there are wait times. I would not say that there are no wait times. That's inaccurate. I think the wait times have gone down significantly. What we are hearing is that, you know, back in March and April and even May, people were saying, I'm calling, I'm not able to get through. I think that that has changed. What we're hearing now is that I'm calling and I'm talking to different people, but I've talked to 3 different people last week. So I think people are getting through and they're talking to folks. The challenge that we're seeing is that we have call center staff who were brought on board in April. Typically, if you're a benefit claims specialist, you go through 3 months of training, and there's a lot of job shadowing and coaching that takes place because unemployment insurance it's complicated. And there are unique situations and lots of variability. That level of training there was no way for that to take place. The 13 staff that we had with experience have been providing the backup, the coaching, the support for the call center. Over the last 10 weeks or so that we've had the call center, we've been able to provide some additional training for some of their staff. So now there's a tiering, there was always a tiering process where the calls would come into the call center and the more complicated cases would get sent to our Bureau of Unemployment Compensation staff. But you still had that, I see a question about a bottleneck. That was the bottleneck. You still had 13 people. So if you had 100 people and they could answer, even if they could answer 50% of the cases, that other 50% would be going to the 13 staff. We now have some of the call center staff who have received additional training. So there are 2 tiers at that level. And then the more complicated cases still go to that same group of people at the unemployment compensation program. We have also trained some of our employment services staff. So people you may think of as the kind of career center staff, so that they're also providing kind of tier 1.5.
Right.
You know, they've got certain expertise that they can handle. And that's the other way that we've done it, is to try to parse out what are the common kinds of questions and challenges, and then where is the right group of people to address those challenges.
And I was just going to add, I know we have tens of thousands of hits, if you will, on our 800 number, people who have tried to call. They get the message that says, lines are busy, please try again later. They are repeatedly trying. We talk to about 2,000 people a day. I know from ones that I have looked at, people are getting through. I also know that they have probably tried many times to get through, but we're seeing comments made that talk to claimant on such a day. So people are getting through. If they do get through, there's about a 45-minute wait right now to talk with the tier 1 representative.
And then if they have to go to tier 2, there's another wait. And last week it was about 15 minutes. I mean, the other thing that we're seeing is that one of the things which we tell people is, if you get through and you are in the queue, please do not hang up. We see people who do hang up when they get in that queue, and then they have to start all over again. So we just encourage people, if you do get through, it is about a 45-minute wait on tier 1. So we apologize for that. We are trying to figure out if there is anything that we can do any quicker. But that's significantly better. As Kim said, it's about 2,000 calls a day that we're handling. And back in March, it was about 400. So there are more calls that we're taking. Most significant bottleneck in the claims process, I mean, it really is, it's qualified staff. I mean, if there was one thing that we needed, was a bench of qualified unemployment insurance experts. We're building the expertise as we go along. It's like with the adjudicators that we're bringing on this week. They are participating in a national training program because, as I had said earlier, about 80% of unemployment is pretty standard across all states. And so we have them going through that national training, and then we're supplementing that with state law. But it really is, it's a complicated program. It's not, not everybody is going to receive the same benefits. We're doing everything we can to increase the skill of everyone that we have here now.
So do employees in high-risk groups lose benefits if they don't go back to work when their employer calls them?
That's one of the fact-finding cases. I mean, it depends. That's one of the situations that there is no simple answer for. We would have to talk to the employee. We would talk to the employer. If the employer has, for example, offered some telework or other accommodation, that would be taken into consideration.
Yeah, we look at whether the offer was of suitable work.
Right.
We tend to decide if it's the offer of work that the person was performing before, it's probably suitable work. But the PUA, the pandemic unemployment laws, do provide additional good cause reasons for not accepting work. It's if you're having to care for somebody who's been impacted by COVID-19, or if your healthcare provider has directed you to still continue to self-isolate, that would be a reason. But as the commissioner said, if the employer is offering the opportunity to telework, then you can still self-isolate and telework. So there are unique scenarios that we have to look at.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a question about how many of the claims filed in the first week are still unprocessed. And I think we had just gotten that before the call.
We're getting information on that.
Yeah, we'll provide that for next week.
Okay, and there's a question about how many defect tickets have been submitted. Again, we can provide that next week. I don't have that number off the top of my head. How many are, who's reviewing those categories? I mean, as we had said earlier, the Deputy Commissioner and I, along with the team from BUC, review all of these issues and try to identify solutions that impact groups of people and deal with those first because our goal is to try to make sure that we are paying as many people as possible as quickly as possible. But we review those regularly with the team.
Mm-hmm.
If we know a constituent has a complex situation, what's the best way to get them to a higher tier staff person? I mean, I think all of the legislators on this call, use or are aware of, we have Isaac Gingras and Evelyn DeFries do weekly, not weekly, daily reports on constituent issues. So I think just flagging those to Isaac and Evie are the best ways to get those elevated. Also, this gets back to the kind of the bucket piece. There are some things that are pretty simple in the scheme of things, and we do parse those out to folks who we try to get the particular claim to the group of people that has the appropriate knowledge. And so if there's something that we can do pretty quickly, We do that like early on. I think you remember we, the Career Center staff were trained to do things like password resets. So if we don't need to use a skilled unemployment compensation person to do that kind of work, we have folks at the Career Center do it. Yeah, so there's a question about if somebody receives a pension. We don't consider pension earnings, do we?
I know we don't consider Social Security,
Right.
so let
Yeah,
us
I don't
look
think
into
so,
that
yeah.
one.
So it's mostly, it's earnings that we would be paying attention to, but Jess, can you keep track of the pension question? I think we may have, the other thing I do want to say, I don't know if people have seen our FAQs, but we do update the FAQs regularly. They are on the website, and I'm not sure if we have an FAQ on pensions, but if we don't, we could put one on there as well. Are there other, how about service industry where many may feel apprehensive about being called back? Yeah, I think that's the question. Pardon?
Repeat the whole question.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to read and talk at the same time. And
How
how
about
about service industry where many may feel apprehensive about being called back and how public health will be protected? These folks obviously cannot telework. I think that they are, that's a perfect example of a case that we're going to have to look at on a case-by-case basis. And also what program they're currently in. They may be in regular unemployment insurance, and they may not meet the criteria for regular unemployment insurance, but they may be able to roll over into pandemic unemployment assistance. Also, I know we had said we would let people on the phone. I'm not sure if we have anybody on the phone who needed to ask a question. Jess, Isaac, do you know?
Calling in on the phone if they'd like to unmute themselves.
Right. If you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, you can unmute yourself by doing what? Just unmute? Okay. Okay, I don't hear any. Are there any metrics data increasing efficiency claims? Representative Bradstreet, one of the things that we are working on is developing a metrics dashboard, and I hope to have that to share with you by next week. But right now I don't. We are gathering, again, we have regular conversations with labor departments from around the country to look at metrics that we're collecting, that they're collecting, and figure out how to produce that. But I hope to have something for you next week. Okay, so here's a question. Would it be possible to issue some sort of verification letter to people who have reported fraud that their complaint has been logged with the state? People with identities are fearful that there will be negative, lasting repercussions for them and want to know what the state is doing to ensure that they are not harmed in the future.
So I know people who report fraud to us get an email confirmation that their report was logged. I think the rest of it we would have to take a look at as to whether there's something above and beyond that.
And we encourage people to go to the AG's website about identity theft and take the appropriate precautions. So the question is, there's a question about, can we explain how we'll determine if individuals should lose their benefits due to the lack of work search? Will a question be asked about whether someone is still attached to the employer? Is there a definite return date going to be required? Those are questions that are regularly asked on the weekly certification, and they have been lifted during this time, so we will resume the regular process.
And I guess as far as whether it's a permanent layoff or a temporary layoff, that would be information that we obtain from the employer.
Right. So, okay, on those folks. Okay, can we, sorry? I think we've got the last question. Update on those folks whose unemployment benefits were paused due to fraud investigation. When can they expect to see new benefits? That's happening daily. I mean, my concern with you asking that is, although we're down to, we will be through all of the claims, all of the identification, verification. We should be through all of those by tomorrow. So if someone has submitted that to us, their claims are being, as their identification is being verified, their claims are being released. So it's been an ongoing process. We haven't been holding them to release them in bulk.
So how will we obtain information from the employer about the separation? That would have been information provided on the original B1.
So I think the question is, if the dates change, are they going to need a new B1 for every single employee?
Gotcha.
I think that's the question. And one of the things that we have been doing with larger layoffs, which was an option that we did not have available at the very beginning of the pandemic, is to do spreadsheets from larger employers to respond. So assuming that an employer was bringing back a group of people, we would probably address it as a group. But we can provide more information next week. And I think that's about it. And I kept saying next week. I have this on time blocked out every Thursday at 11 o'clock from 11 until 12 to provide regular briefings for you. If people could get questions and I hope this was helpful, if people could get questions to Isaac a day ahead of time, that would allow me and Kim to try to, or sooner, to address the questions that you have in kind of a more comprehensive way. So, so again, thank you. I hope this was helpful. If you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us, to reach out to Isaac and Evie. And stay safe, everyone.